So the specific do's and don'ts again is important. This is really a very useful set of tips and insights for you as BAs from my experience, and also from the insights that we gather from the different sources. But more so, this is what I put together, and also PCS advises this. Technology, do not focus much on the technology. It's just a medium. I think, as we've been discussing all along in the last few weeks, technologies change. Technologies facilitate doing things. Previously, we had COBOL about 3-4 decades ago, and then we moved on to mainframes. Mainframes moved on, and from there we got into the enterprise computing. We've got blade servers. They moved on, and then we've got on-premise solutions. We've got all these, fantastic, big, huge servers, blade servers that what we call from Dell, IBM, so on and so forth. And then we moved on to from the on-premise solution, we got the infrastructure moved on into the infrastructure as a service, and then into the PaaS, cloud, software as a service. Now it's all about software as a service and cloud and the platform as a service. And so also with even the languages moved on, right? We've got the big, huge machines like running into COBOL and those kind of things. And then we had DBase 3+, then we had all these other, back end, the front end things changing, evolving and transforming. And right now we've got Python, we've got PHP, we've got Perl, Java, .NET, or C#. So all of these, there's no one size fits all, and there's no one specific solution that lasts longer. So it really depends on the context. So the advice from me is not to rely on the technology, not to focus too much on the technology, but what you should try and focus on is what is the improvement that we're going to actually bring into the business. And that's where we as BAs would need to focus on and make sure that the stakeholders, whether it's internal stakeholders or external stakeholders, they understand this aspect better, and we should communicate that better. So that's the whole idea. Again, we've had a look at it before. Solutions, do not focus on solutions. Do not try to be an expert in one particular language, technology, or anything, even though some of the people would actually say that. But we as BAs, the greatest strength of BAs is to actually kind of facilitate and enable the team to, to identify, recommend, and implement and deliver the solutions. We cannot own their delivery, or we should not be in a position to actually say that, yeah, this is the only thing which works. Remember the T curve, yeah, which is all about the mile wide and inch deep. So that's the kind of approach we should have initially. And potentially we can move on into the mile deep and the inch wide in terms of the specific area. So solutions, to be an expert in solutions, I think that's a wrong expectation from some of the organizations. I've seen some of the job adverts out there which says you should be, programming. The BA should be able to do, coding and this things. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if it is a specific thing, or if it's a very focused vertical, for example, an SAP ABAP kind of a thing, where you still have a functional consultant like the SD, sales and distribution, and then you also have other, functional areas. You've got finance, and you've got a lot of those different functional verticals there. So you've got other things like technical consultant, which is where you see most of these ABAP consulting, ABAP development, the SAP's programming language. So depending on your interest, if you want to be in that area, fair enough. But then we cannot expect the BAs to be specialists in a vertical, in terms of the expertise or the speciality. It should be more of the domain specialization. That's fine. You should be able to have all the skills, the soft skills that you bring to the fore. Then it's not about the business perfection. There's no such thing as a perfect business. Remember what happened to IBM. It's supposedly the world's best, machines in the hardware industry, making fantastic computers. Started off with high-end servers and into all kinds of, PCs. The so-called PC that we're using now, the personal computer, was actually the invention of IBM. Look what happened after a good 120, 130 years of transition. IBM suddenly about 5, 6, or even 10 years ago decided we're not into machine, we're not into hardware. So we're selling off the whole thing that was built. So that's all about the business agility. They sold off the whole hardware unit to Lenovo, and then they started focusing on the services, IBM Global Services and all those other things. So it actually talks about how nimble, how agile, how flexible you should be as a business, as an organization, to undertake these different things. So you should not just be, stuck with one aspect. If you're trying to, that's where these sessions, these courses would actually kind of help you to understand what's really happening around the context of BA. So you can't just be siloed, sitting in front of your desk and thinking that, well, I'm learning, I've got everything. No, it's a new normal, as we all see. Everything is changing. We should be agile in our work, in our life, and also in terms of our technologies and business understanding. And that's why we're actually bringing forth this agile development course, only to kind of equip you specifically around the techniques, the toolkits, and the methodologies, the Scrum, Lean, Kanban, all of these we're going to discuss in detail coming the deep dive sessions starting the first week of October. And of course, the next one is, as a BA, you're responsible for managing the requirements. So the requirements and the requests could come from every source, as we discussed last time. It could come from the customers, from the users. It would come in from anybody. So as and when you get a request doesn't mean you take it on board and you work on that. So that means you're going to actually, as the saying goes, you can't please everyone. I mean, pleasing everyone is like pleasing no one, pleasing none. So it's important that we kind of filter the requirements, make sure that they're feasible technically, they're viable commercially, they're usable in terms of the product's user experience, and then they've got the right quality. And of course, they're desirable in the market in terms of the financial and affordability. So all of these are important when we kind of assess a feature or any requirement or a request or a task, whatever comes your way as BAs. So again, very important attribute for BA. And then of course, it's not about defining the requirements. Remember, I was talking about the FRS, the so-called documents, bulky documents that I used to write: functional requirements, specifications, market requirements document, business requirements document, software requirements specification document, 300, 400, 1,000-page documents, where we as BAs used to spend like at least a good 3-4 months to write those. And then after 2-3 months, getting sign off and everything goes through. Finally, you actually start working on the product, and that's where everything changes. And again, go back to the boardroom, and then again, make the changes. So that's the definition of requirements actually changed over thanks to Agile in the last few years. So we now have got user stories, slim, very, very, very pared down versions of the requirements. It's very simple to use and simple to change. So they've come through, but then it's not just enough that you write the stories. It's actually kind of, you should be able to prioritize and be able to move the stories up and down, the requirements up and down, depending on the requirements, depending on the changes that are happening with the customers, with the business, technology, and everything else. So the focus is actually not on the specifics, those siloed requirements. We should be actually looking at the entire life cycle. That's where we were talking about in the last practices and the approaches session the last couple of weeks ago. We were talking about addressing the whole thing, life cycle, and making sure that we own the life cycle of the entire change. And that's why nowadays you've got with Agile, especially with Scrum, you've got the new role introduced called product owner. So a product owner is owning the product, which is completely different from a project manager who is running and owning the project. It's about resources and milestones and things like that, about getting people to work on this, recruitment, training, development, stuff like delivery. Whereas a product owner, or even the business analyst team, and along with the product owner, would own the product, as in they would make sure that they understand the needs of the customers. We understand the needs of the users. Make sure we prioritize all these, understanding the requirements in the form of the user stories, prioritize them, give them Moscow prioritization, make sure they're actually factored into the specific releases, come up with a release plan. We've got the major release, minor release, and then within this, how each of these fits in, what kind of requirements would go in when, and then deliver them as part of one particular release or beta version, so to say, and then go for testing, conduct testing, get feedback, improve on it. Look at how the role of BA has changed. It's not just more about requirements, but we need to spread our wings and make sure that we actually have got all the other aspects into the realm. That's what is important as BA. So we should be owners. We should have more ownership on the product. And it's not about avoidance of a risk. It's not about leaving something out and then completely ignoring that. It's not about, even if it is risk, for example, risk avoidance is not about that as well. Or if you're not trying to avoid, you're not trying to avoid the people, you're not trying to avoid your competitors. It's all about negotiating, working with everyone, making sure that they get what they need and we have. And that's why I say that, for example, it's all about asking a question like, do you have what I need? And asking the other question, the same question the other way, just so the other person can understand. So it's basically, do you have what I need? And do I have what you need? So basically, it's all about the give and take. So somebody else has got a problem, a need, an opportunity, and we have an address, we have a solution, we have something that would help address that problem. And in turn, it could be the other way around. So we're expecting something from them in return. Do they have it? It's basically a kind of a more glam version of the barter system that we used to have. But that's what businesses are now. It's all about resources, finding the resources quickly and being able to deliver them quickly, working with the system, working with the entire ecosystem of suppliers, of different partners, alliances, organizations, like, for example, your regulatory organizations. It's all about these. And then, of course, the important thing is to not get too embroiled with the symptoms, but you should try and look at the real root cause of why something is happening. And I think that's where our techniques, I'm going to discuss some of the techniques today and tomorrow, something like 5 why technique, the fishbone, for example, Ishikawa, that's another thing to understand the root cause. You need to look at it from a holistic perspective, as well as take a deep dive into each of those specifics to actually understand the root cause, why something is happening. I think, again, I'll relate it back to what we were discussing the other week about what is it that that was suffering, that was actually contributing to the problem in that situation. I was giving an example of a project being failed after 2 years of work. And why it failed? Because the customer was not happy. Why was the customer not happy? Because the delivery did not meet up to the expectation. Why was the delivery not meeting the expectation? Because we did not capture them in the first place. Why did not we capture? Because there was the template and the procedure was not there to capture the non-functional requirements, the performance availability. Specifically in that context, we could not foresee that the customer has such a huge dependency on the performance aspect of this particular project, where we were to deliver a report after 7 minutes, whereas it was the new system was taking 20 minutes, whereas the old system was actually taking 2 days. So the reliance on the performance as a key factor did not come through in the discussion. So that was the root cause. And based on that, we actually kind of rejigged the whole thing. We came up with the specifics in terms of the templates, the procedures, that we updated everything so that the BA would actually work in tandem with the technical architect and the technical lead initially to identify all the non-functional requirements. It could be the usability, reliability, performance, security, all these other things right in front, right in the first place, instead of actually spending time later. So that's again a root cause that we did the root cause analysis. Then we found out after a lot of this deep dive. So this is kind of a quick look